Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Young Lawyer Podcast. For all those newbies listening in, this podcast discusses topics such as studying law, mental states, mindsets, dealing with external factors, and unexpected circumstances. Along the way, having guest speakers such as senior associates, graduate lawyers, and students. Now let's get into it.
Well, welcome to the Young Lawyer Podcast. It's great to have you on. If you can just start by introducing yourself and how you began your legal journey.
Sure. My name's Sarah Jones. I'm a legal practitioner director and the COO of a firm called JHK Legal. I started my legal journey some years ago when I was 17 as a clerk at a small firm in Brisbane. I never really wanted to be a lawyer when I started out. I just thought a law degree was a good option. But I found that I really enjoyed it, so stuck it out.
And I guess, what was your mindset around that whole, a law degree is, something could be valuable, I guess. How did you come across that idea?
Look, I think at the time there was a bit of movement, I suppose, away from some of the other more generalist degrees, and a law degree was a good way to show someone that you could stick at something, something quite difficult for an extended time and you could probably show some pretty good problem-solving skills. And of course, it turns out that the degree was useful to become a lawyer as well in the end.
And I guess, what is it along that journey that made you actually want to stick with being a lawyer?
I worked in a lot of law firms. I worked for some barristers' chambers. I worked for a couple of lecturers at university during my law degree. So over the course of that period of time, I got a good idea of commercial law in particular, or commercial and litigation, I should say, and what it entailed, the problem solving involved, and the client interaction involved as well, the helping people, which I don't think I had really ever attributed to litigation or commercial at the time. And I just really enjoyed myself when I was there. And when I finished my degree, I thought it was worth having a shot. And some years later, here we are.
And do you feel like if maybe you just went straight to uni and didn't do the experience, you wouldn't have probably stuck it out as long as you did, or?
Oh, definitely not. No. I think because, and the university I went to, and I'm sure a bunch of the universities, they're fabulous and they do their best to give you an idea of what the experience is like. But until you're there, you really just don't know.
Yeah,
My personal experience, anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the same with me. You can only cover so much in, 12 weeks worth of uni doing one subject. And they teach you everything that can go right, but then you get out into practice, you got to deal with everything that can go wrong. And it's just like, oh, not quite ready yet.
100%. And a huge amount of law, again, in my personal experience, is common sense, is people and relationships and building those, trust, things that are just not technical skills that you can learn without doing them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess that's why you try and push out to the younger or those who are still studying. You put your hand up for everything, get the experience, and, you can crack down on what you do like and what you don't like, a bit quicker than waiting until after uni.
Oh, 100%. If there's an opportunity to try and work in some different areas of law while you're at university, or even, in your first couple of years of practice, then I highly recommend that.
And so you mentioned litigation a few times now. Is that the current field you're in and specialising in, I'm guessing?
I actually specialise in commercial law now. I did cut my teeth on litigation, debt recovery in particular, and I spent some years, and we're still a small enough firm that I still do some litigation and some insolvency work, and I enjoy it. But broadly speaking, the larger portion of my practice now is commercial law.
And I guess, how did you narrow down what you wanted to specialize in or wanted to continue to work in?
I just, as you said earlier, I just gave a few different things that the firms that I worked at were doing. I just absolutely bugged the partners. I suppose now, as a director, I probably wouldn't recommend that. But at the time, I really just pushed for them to give me a shot at anything, put my hand up for anything. And it gave me a real sense of what I enjoyed and what I had the best aptitude for as well, of course.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is there any major influences that came along from your journey in the legal profession?
You mean like people?
People, family, friends, outside, yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I must say, or I ought to say, both of my parents are lawyers. So I was very privileged coming into the legal world, having those connections, and they gave me an enormous leg up. But they also acted. Both of my parents acted as hugely influential mentors to me, particularly when I was younger, although they still take my calls every now and again. And I really, I wouldn't have lasted this long, I don't think, without having those two as my mentors, sounding boards, and just all round pretty great people, to sort of get me through the difficult periods. And they taught me enormous amounts, and they gave me a huge amount of capacity to learn to respect my own opinion and back myself, which is such a gift as a lawyer, to be told that, you probably got it right.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something you really need to learn, I guess, from a young part of the journey, is that, you've got to just back yourself sometimes. Like, you've done all the study, now you're a junior lawyer or whatever, you've kind of missing that confidence, and it takes a while to actually build up. So definitely be, privileged having that mentor going, you're actually in the right ballpark, like, keep going.
Yeah, 100%. And in the end, if there's one piece of advice I could give, it's that, look, a lot of the time there is an answer, but not irregularly. The law, we deal in grey areas. So as long as you're acting with integrity and thinking things through, backing yourself is the right thing to do. If you've thought it through and you think you're right, you most likely would be.
Yeah, completely agree. And I guess in that similar circumstance, would you probably place a bit of weight on, having a good mentor, having a good work environment to actually learn and grow as a young lawyer or a student?
Yeah. And if you can, finding that mentor organically or through a program is such a fabulous way to learn and grow as a lawyer, as a law student, and then as a lawyer. Our firm, I personally feel that our firm really emphasizes those personal relationships. We have a mentoring program, but in general, we also really try and emphasize an open door policy for the senior staff to make sure we're available for that learning and growth for the junior guys. Because in the end, as I said just before, back yourself, but in the end, you still need someone signing off on it. You still need someone to say, when you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's so true. And I feel like just from doing these podcasts, I've found out how, I guess, supportive the whole profession is. Like, I started out, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get 5 lessons with my mum, dad, my sister.
Yeah.
And then, everyone's putting their hand up there, everyone wants to chat, and, everyone's sharing it or just, giving some guidance on how to improve it. And it's actually just been really good to see. And I'm hoping I'm passing that on to show how easy it is to connect with others in the legal community.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the podcast is fabulous, and it's such a great resource for people to be able to access. But I think you're really right. I think that the legal world as a whole, in general, of course, um, is a pretty supportive place to be when you go looking for it.
Yeah, there's that big, when you go looking for it, you got to actually make that step yourself. And I feel like a lot of people hold themselves back thinking, oh no, they're directors or, they're senior associates, they're going to be busy, they're going to have time for me. But, a lot of people make a lot of time.
Yeah. And I think that that it's true, of course, that they are busy, but they want to make the time, and some of the time it's quite hard, I think, without someone knocking on your door and saying, look, would you mind taking 30 minutes out of your day? My experience has been that everyone I know who's a senior lawyer almost always says yes. They're sort of desperate to help. They just don't know where to or how to.
Yeah, it gets to a bit stage where you want to you want to give back. It's just like, there's really not much unless, something is created in that regard to, mentor someone.
Yeah, and there's some really good university programs that I've seen down here in New South Wales since I got here, and I'm sure in the other states as well, of course. And a lot of firms have really good structural mentoring programs as well. But then also some of the time, particularly in your firm, you develop an organic relationship with a senior person. They might not necessarily be your inverted commas mentor that was assigned to you, but it doesn't mean that they don't want to take on that role.
Yeah, the little bits here and there that just kind of compound over time. You realize that, they've actually been pretty well mentoring you from the start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that you are a director, what advice would you have as an employer in the current market, I guess, for someone trying to stand out or make an impression and proceed to getting a job?
Enthusiasm. I think we as a firm, generally our recruitment policy is looking for culture fit. So, but you can't anticipate what that culture fit's going to be beforehand, really. But if someone is enthusiastic, they've had a look at the website, they take a bit of interest, and they look, excited. They're interested in coming on board. It's such a breath of fresh air, Enthusiasm is definitely something that I think helps people stand out. Everyone's different, of course. Different firms have different rules about what marks you need to have got and this and that and whatever. But certainly we're really looking for someone who we can make a genuine connection with, who happy to have a bit of a chat, but really a bit of enthusiasm. It just goes it goes miles.
Yeah, and what I have noticed from speaking with directors and senior associates on these things is how I feel like we're moving away from, I guess, the old style of interviewing where you sit down and just get asked a bunch of questions, and it's more of, all right, let's go grab a coffee, we'll chat, I want to get to know you and what your personality is like to see if it actually fits the team you're going to be working with.
Yeah, definitely. And no matter, you might be working for the biggest firm in Australia, but in the end, you're still working in a small team. And small teams run on people dynamics, and looking for that right fit means that a little bit more of a relaxed attitude for both parties, the interviewer as well, because you want to make sure that the person who you're going to offer the job to actually wants the job, having met you. Because sometimes you're not the fit for them either.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point to put the shoe on the other foot, I guess, because I guess in my experience, it's always never been the firm's, I guess, situation to actually sell the firm to the employer. It's always been, the employee's desperate for the job that they're just like, yeah, we'll go with whatever.
I mean, look, and that might be sort of the market at the moment, particularly for students, or that's what I've heard in any event. But generationally, that seems to be changing. And certainly we want to make sure that the people that we get on board, you're meeting someone for 30 minutes. You don't really know exactly who they are, but you want to make sure that in as much as they have an opportunity to get to know you, that they agree, yeah, this does feel right.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving on to the next topic, what, I guess, advice would you give to someone who's looking to start out a legal journey?
In like starting a degree?
Starting a degree, wanting to work, advice to anyone who's looking to join the legal profession.
It's easy for me to say, having given you the background of my privilege, of course, coming into this profession, but ideally I would say get as much experience as you can. Because areas of law are so different that you might think that the law is not for you, or you're not cut out for the law, or whatever. But criminal law and family law and commercial law, they're extraordinarily different practices. If you can get a little bit of experience, it's ideal to find out what you enjoy, but also to make you more employable. When you become a lawyer, gives you extra skills, makes you stand out from the pack. The other thing is to not, I'm trying to shy away from saying nots, but to not do it for the wrong reasons. The law is a fabulous profession. I love my job and my firm, but I think there is still in certain, particularly parental expectations, sometimes an expectation that it's sort of a good profession the right profession to go into. If you've done well at school, or you're a particularly smart person, or a debater, or whatever. And the thing is that in the end, and again, this is probably a bit of a privileged situation to be in, but if you're going to university, maybe you've got that same opportunity to pick something that you've got some interest in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I completely agree. It's, since becoming a lawyer, a lot of people that you meet are all like, oh, you must be making lots of money. I'm like, no, I'm a first year lawyer.
We all wish.
Yeah, like I love my job, but yeah, it's not about the money. I do it because I enjoy it. And I feel like a lot of people don't take that on board, especially when you do have that parental pressure, like you mentioned. And people don't often realize that, it's a fair chunk of years to actually be focusing on one subject. So you want to make, not one subject, one degree, and you want to make sure that you're actually doing it because you want to do it, not because someone else is telling you to. Because you'll get halfway through and realize, oh, this is boring, or it's not interesting to me. I don't want to do this anymore, and you've just wasted 2.5 years.
Well, but equally, I do want if you finish it and it turns out it wasn't for you, that's okay as well. Like, I just think, but give it a go. In the end, what I said earlier, and I think you agree, that the degree is different than the practice. And if you can have a shot at working in practice, you will know if it's for you or if it's not. Ideally, work in a couple of firms, probably because, if you work in a particular firm and it's not for you, that might not necessarily be because of the law. But yeah, I think if you can get some experience early days, that's my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, and that's such good advice too. Just one final question to wrap it up, I guess. If you weren't, there's two. It's a two-part question. My apologies. If you weren't a lawyer, what do you reckon you'd be? And what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh gosh, interesting. if I wasn't a lawyer, I mean, look, if money didn't come into it, I'd probably just read novels all day. But if I had to make a living out of it, then I mean, I guess I'd probably try and do something in literature. The number one, remind me, sorry, what the second part of that question was?
What is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh, everyone's just doing their best. We're all just muddling through. No one's, well, perhaps that's unfair, and there's some people who'll say, "Oh God, I know everything," but no, it's very rare that there's another first-year lawyer out there or university student or whatever who's sitting there thinking they know absolutely everything on their desk every day. Everyone's just trying their best, trying to give it a shot, and it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah, that's such a great point. With that note, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and thanks so much for joining me and taking the time out of your day.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to the Young Lawyer Podcast. If you found this content useful or enjoyable, make sure you share it with your family, friends, or colleagues. Let's grow the Young Lawyer community. If I can ask you a huge favour, can you please leave a review or a comment on iTunes and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that way we can grow the community even further. Until next time, guys.